Sky Lakota-Lynch is a Tony nominee this year for The Outsiders, the musical on Broadway. I'm David Buchanan with Gold Derby. Sky, first and foremost, a hearty congratulations on the Tony nomination.
Well, thank you so much, David. Thank you.
Take us back to that morning. I mean, how did you hear the news, and what does it feel like when you either are watching the announcement or you're getting texts that you're nominated? What is that kind of bodily reaction to the news that you're a Tony nominee?
I mean, I was sleeping when the nominations happened because I just didn't expect to get one just because of how other things were shaking out. And also just because I don't really measure myself in awards. And I was just so wrapped up in just having opened the show. And, I never thought that I'd get to do the show on Broadway. Been with the show for 6 years, so it's like I remember doing it at like the Daryl Roth Theater for $20. So when I got people texting me and calling me that I had the nomination, I just like couldn't catch my breath. I was like spinning and I was just like, are you sure? Because Steven Skybell is also a nominee. And I thought they were like had messed up that it was not me and it was him. And so I like reread the list like 20 times and I was like, holy crap, I'm a freaking Tony nominee. What? Yeah, it was wild, man. Wild.
It's amazing and so well deserved. And you're sharing it with your co-stars, Brody Grant, who's in the lead category, and Joshua Boone, who's alongside you. How special is it to share it with those two guys? I mean, I think you're all first-time Tony nominees. So what does that feel like?
It's wild because we're also all the youngest in our category as well. And it feels like we're being seen by the Tony Awards, like especially me and Josh Boone, we've been in the industry for a while and we kind of just been like in the shadows a little bit and like grinding and grinding and grinding. And now like with the outsiders and specifically like Johnny, Pony, and Dally, these characters are finally getting their flowers after 60 years of being around in high schools, like even the book doesn't have a Pulitzer. So it's like thank God for Susie Hinton and thank God for the Tony Awards for just like shining a light, even a nomination on these characters. It's an honor, man.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier you've been with this show for a long time between workshops, out of town tryouts, and finally arrived on Broadway. How has the experience evolved for you, and how has your understanding of the character deepened the more you kind of get to, inhabit him and explore him over time?
It's wild. Like life happened, and like I think I wasn't quite ready to take on Johnny in 2019. I think I could have done a shell of Johnny, but I had to grow up and become an adult. And of course, the pandemic and just dealing with like, who am I without theater? Who am I without my job? And we go through loss and things like that. And so I brought all that into Johnny once Danya Tamor took over as director, and we're both Libras and like getting to hash out who this character is because Johnny only has like 10 lines and he only has one solo. So I studied things like Edward Scissorhands and Paris, Texas, and movies where the character doesn't have a lot of lines, but he has to be such a good listener. So yeah, I'm grateful for the timing of it all. I think that the world had to happen the way it did with George Floyd and other things like that. But as sad as that is, I think it's timely that The Outsiders is happening right now. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great point. And I know the book really resonated with you and has really special meaning to you from when you were in school reading it, seeing the film. Was Johnny always a character that resonated with you? And what about him, out of all the characters in that wonderful novel really stood out?
It's funny, it was the first book I ever read in middle school, and I was in special education. I was a kid with dyslexia. I was also in behavior classes because I was like a class clown and I was kind of rowdy. And so like we were all in one class, a bunch of like behavior kids. And our teacher tricked us into reading The Outsiders by showing us the movie. And at first we were all making fun of it and like, this is so dumb. And then we like settled into the plot and like fell in love with all these characters and started like calling each other Johnny or Dally or Ponyboy. And then we read the book together, and it was the first book that most of us ever read. And I resonated with Johnny just because I come from a broken family. Like my family has a lot of issues, and I love all of them, but it's family. Family is very complicated. But I thought that I was the only one because I just didn't talk about that, And so when I saw Johnny and I saw that Johnny is a hero, I was like, wait a minute, like I don't have to be the loudest one in the class, and I don't have to have a perfect family to be a hero or to be seen. And yeah, that's what I really resonated with that. And I think the book really saved my life because a lot of the kids that were in that class are no longer on this earth. And, they haven't even made it to 21, so.
Wow, that's heartbreaking to hear, but beautiful about the power of literature and that novel in particular. You got to visit Tulsa before Broadway rehearsals. There's a great article in the New York Times about all you guys going down and getting to go on that journey. I wanted to ask you, what did you learn by going to the setting of the play and the novel and the film? And how did you kind of take that experience and bring it back to you and bring it back to the Broadway stage?
Oh man, that was one of the best experiences of my life. Like truly was, because Tulsa is such a specific city. It's also just such a melting pot because of the oil money. I'm also Native American, so like getting to see people like myself, because on the East Coast there are a lot of Native Americans, but we're so spread out and we're so Americanized. Do you know what I'm saying? Where they have intact their culture still, because of just where they were pushed out to. Sort of like Killers of the Flower Moon, and so getting to be around that was just like mind blowing. And then my whole cast, we got to go out and go two-stepping at like these Tulsa clubs, and we got the key to the city from the mayor. And Angelina Jolie was there, and Essie Hinton was there. And the first time I ever heard "Stay Gold" was in her high school that she wrote the book. And I hate the sound of my own voice, but I sat there with the kids of that high school and listened to it and cried. And man, it changed my life. And also just like we brought back so much of that Tulsa soil and filtered it into the play. And I mean, even down to like the pedal steel guitar that's now on Far Away from Tulsa was from the two-step bar we heard in Tulsa. So it was formative for sure for me and my cast.
Yeah, no question. You mentioned working with Danya Tamor, your director, and the really special bond you have. I wanted to ask you about working with her because what's so unique about this show is she brings such a style, like
Yeah.
a kind of cinematic flair to the staging of this piece. But obviously, too, everything is grounded in the emotion of the character. So, what was it like to kind of explore, especially Johnny, as you said, maybe doesn't have the most lines of the characters, but just explore like how to inhabit the space as Johnny and balance between the emotion and also, this kind of beautiful movement and choreo.
I've got to work with a lot of great directors in my young career. I've worked with James Lapine, I've worked with Michael Greif, I've worked with a lot of amazing people. For me, Danya, because we're also close in age, she's very young, and we're both Libras. We just get along so well, and it's a true collaboration with her and with everyone in the room. The number one thing that Danya does that changed the way that I act is before we even pick up the text, we do a thing called a mirroring. So if I'm going to mirror you, you're going to mirror me, it'll be a theme. And so we do that every single day all the way into previews, even now. Like even on stage, me and Brody are mirroring in the drive-in. And so it just allows for emotional reality to happen without words. Because Adam Rapp is also a playwright who won't write anything he doesn't have to write. And like specifically in the Johnny Daly scene at the top of the show, it's what's not said that's more important than what's said, because it's not about the chocolate bar, it's about what's going on in Johnny's house. And so Danya really allows us to access that inner life. I've also worked with Danya on a show called Jonah. I was supposed to do that with her, but I decided to do The Outsiders instead. And she works the same way. I mean, she's just fantastic. I mean, we're also great friends, and I hope this collaboration lasts until we both die.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought up that scene with Dally at the beginning of the show. I think it's one of my favorite moments for you on stage because it's so simple, as you're saying, in terms of how it's written, but so powerful. And the intensity you bring to that moment is just incredible. What was it like kind of playing that dynamic with Josh and finding exactly what that should be?
It was wild, man, because I've looked up to Josh Boone most of my career. He's a bit older than me, and he's also a dad in real life. So like getting to like have that fatherly figure in that role just makes my job that much easier. And also just Josh is such a calming presence on stage, and I know that I'm in good hands. So even if I'm tired or even if I'm having an off night, Josh Boone has me, and vice versa. It's hard to find these roles. I've been through the whole casting process of this thing and had multiple dallies, and just we settled on Josh Boone, and I think it's the perfect fit because he's exactly where he has to be in his life in order to tell the story truthfully. And I'm so grateful for Josh and that.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about Pony Boy's relationship with Johnny. Obviously, I think that's, the heart of the whole show is their friendship and dynamic. What do you think draws them to each other? I mean, obviously, they all have a bond with the Greasers, but their relationship in particular is so powerful. So what is it that out of everybody that really connects them, do you think?
I think it's that they can sit in silence together. and they could just be in each other's company and not have to say anything. You know, they can be in a church and not have to talk because they both are going through a similar thing. And although Johnny has both of his parents, he might as well not because they don't care about him. And Pony had these two amazing parents who Johnny really looked up to, and why Johnny goes to the house is to get food and to get things in the family that he doesn't get at home. And I think that, especially now that Ponyboy's grieving his parents, it's like Johnny's the number one comfort zone for Pony, you know, because he doesn't have to talk about it necessarily. He can just be with Johnny and be a kid. He's allowed to be a kid with Johnny, you know?
Yeah, beautifully said. I want to talk to you too about the choreography of this show. I mean, the Cooperman brothers have done some extraordinary stuff on this. I mean, number one, what was the process like? Obviously, you had a lot of time to, learn it and it evolved, but what was the process like of perfecting this really intense choreography over the course of however much time you've had to get it right?
I mean, it took years, man. It took years. The shocking thing is the Rumble took about 3 days, and it sort of stayed the same. Of course, you have to perfect it, and it has to be so precise because one misstep, you can clock someone in the head, you know, and just the elements are just, and it's never happened before, thank God. But it's like, that's one of the most precise things. The Coopermans are just wild, man, because they think truly outside of the box. If you think they're going to go for an X, they're going to go for a Z. If you think they're going to go for a T, they're going to go for a W, which is the way I like to work too. And so I feel taken care of by them. I also like, they come from a sort of stunt world as well. And my first job was a thing called Iron Fist. And instead of staying inside of my trailer, I got to like hang out with the stunt guys and I learned so much from them. And the Coopermans work in a very similar way, which is just ingenious. And I'm so happy they're getting their flowers. And I think we're going to be seeing a whole lot more of the Cooperman brothers in A24 films and beyond, you know?
Yeah, totally. Let's talk about the Rumble too, because you have such a unique role in that. Obviously, at that moment in the show, Johnny is not in good condition and he's not in the Rumble, but Ponyboy imagines him, and it's really a gorgeous moment where all of this kind of cacophony of stuff that's going on stage slows down as we really see Johnny. I mean, it's a beautiful moment. So what is it like to first like insert yourself into all the choreography that's going on?
It's wild, man, because I can kind of see a bird's eye view of it all. I can see everyone sort of slowly crossing, and I have to fit inside this little pocket and not be seen as best as I can until that reveal at the end. But it's also just so liberating, man. Like getting hit by that water is so refreshing, and it like brings me back in order to then sing "Stay Gold" at the end. So I think it's essential. I mean, in La Jolla, we had it where Johnny was on the tire and he just like stuck his hand out. But I think this version truly makes it what we call a memory play. The entire thing is like Glass Menagerie. It's just on a constant circle, which is just awesome. Yeah.
Is it just astounding to watch that, 8 times a week? I can't imagine, number one, how everybody in this company is performing that over and over again. But what's it like I know you have to be in it and you're obviously being very conscious of timing, but to just prepare to go on stage and see that unfold must be incredible.
Yeah, man, it's like it uses all your senses when you watch it because you smell the hotness of the water because the water's hot, and you can smell the rubber getting hit, and you can see the whole crew like every night. Even like the union guys are still like just watching the Rumble happen because it's just so awesome. And we have some of the best dancers to ever be on Broadway in our cast as well. Like some of the guys from the West Side Story movie are in our cast. Like, so getting to see Kevin Solak and Sean Jones and Barton Copperthwaite like do their thing is wild, man. I'm trying not to take this for granted as much as I can, you know?
Yeah. Okay, I think we've buried the lead long enough because I have to ask you about Stay Gold, which is I mean, number one, an absolutely gorgeously written song, and you perform it so perfectly. What about that song resonates with you the most?
It's wild, man, because I joined the show 6 years ago, as you know, and that was the first song I ever heard. That was the first song they ever wrote. And so I started thinking about, at the time I was playing Jared Kleinman in Dear Evan Hansen, and I looked at myself as a funny person. And when I went in for the show, I auditioned for Two-Bit at first, and they stopped me halfway and they're like, "You're Johnny. I see it in your eyes. You're Johnny. You're just hiding something from us." And so when I listened to Stay Gold, I was very close to my noni, my grandmother, my mom's mom. And she died tragically young from cancer. And I was there in like her last moments, and I saw her accept her death in front of my face. And I remember the sun was setting in her room, and I was just like in awe that my grandmother was passing, but it was also peaceful at the same time, and she did what she had to do. So when we were building Stay Gold, I was really trying to put my noni into it so that people can also be closer to their loved ones that they've lost. And us, the living, are scared of dying. And you won't know what dying is like until you die, as sad as that is. But death is also a beautiful thing. And it's also a reminder to love life. So that's what Stay Gold really does mean to me, is it's for my noni, but it's also about, it's a love letter to slowing down and enjoying the simple things in life.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said. And I think that moment, I mean, there's so many moments in the show, but that moment, the audience is incredibly emotional. I mean, it really kind of hits like a wallop. Can you kind of hear and feel the audience response to the song? And how do you kind of, take that and inflect it in the performance? Do you try not to, hear the sobbing and the sniffles? Like, how do you kind of incorporate that in your performance?
At first, I didn't hear it at all because I was just so focused on Brody, and trying to get to Pony Boy. And, Johnny plays a particular part in that because it's almost like another play. It's almost like a side note of the rest of the thing. And so at first I wasn't hearing it, and now the more that I hear it, I try to embrace the audience with it and talk to Pony Boy with the audience and pull him out of his funk, and because we all have funks in our life, and hopefully a piece of art can pull you out of it and inspire you to go back to school or to do that audition or to call your mom, because sometimes it gets hard to get wrapped up into life and in the funk. So yeah, man, I try to embrace the audience as much as I can selflessly and bring them along for the ride to help someone.
Before I let you go, Sky, I have to ask you, do you have a favorite scene or a tiny moment in the show where every time you do it 8 times a week, you're really looking forward to that, just that moment to get to do over and over again?
Yeah, I think it is actually in Stay Gold when I say tell Dally I don't think he knows. It's just like when I look at Brody, we and Brody are also very close. I've known Brody for 5 years. And so when I get to do that with my friend, it's like there's nothing better. We never thought this would come to Broadway, and when it did, we were shocked, and now we're nominated for Tony Awards, and it's just like it's sort of like Merrily Roll Along, but like IRL. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like this is actually happening. It's wild to get to see all your friends come up, because like also Ryan Vasquez used to be in the Outsiders, and John Cardoza was like a roommate of mine through my girlfriend, and so it's just this time on Broadway is just surreal. So I'm just trying to never take it for granted.
Sky Lakota-Lynch, congratulations on The Outsiders. Thanks so much for talking to Gold Derby today.
Thank you, David.